Bhakti Vikasa Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtottara Sata Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Go Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadip Dham ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Yamuna Mai ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Ga Premanande Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarne Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Shrishtham Manum Api Shachiputram Atra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupurim Maturim Goshtavartim Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Ataf Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Guru Vaishnav Bhagavan Tina Smarani Hoy Vigna Vinashan Anayashe Hoy Nijaban Tita Purat Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Talking again about fall down. Actually, we should talk about going up. That's what we want to do, isn't it? Whoever wants to fall down, raise your hands. Have you seen something? Who wants Krishna Prem, raise your hands. It's commonly said in various lectures, as if it's such a simple thing as just raising your hands. Who wants to fall down? No one wants to fall down? Well, there must be some kind of desire that everything is impelled by desire. How can we keep the desires such that we're always looking to go up and not down? That is what we are discussing. Because while we're trying to go up, Maya is trying to push us down. We can't go down unless we cooperate with Maya. But Maya is very strong. Daivihi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. Very strong. She's stronger than the individual jiva is very tiny. The individual jiva up against the whole of the material energy. She's overseeing so many jivas. Eta brahmanda bhare ananta jivagan. Chaurasi lakha yonite kareye brahman. But her power is not diminished because she's overseeing so many. She's quite competent to keep all of them in Maya. And she does. And she's very powerful. We can't control the material energy. The scientists, they used to talk. We used to hear how scientists will control them. They're going to control nature. We used to hear when I was a child. Now, they don't talk like that anymore. Arjuna spoke about controlling the mind is more difficult than controlling the wind. There's a story from English folklore, may or may not be true. The story of King Canute. This is going back to more than 1,000 years. Heard of it? Anyone heard of King Canute? The story goes like that, it may be. There was some local king in England before he was all united as one kingdom. And either he thought he was so powerful that he could order the tide to go back, or sometimes it's said that he wanted, another interpretation is that he was fed up of everyone around him praising him so much. And so he went to the shore of the sea at the time of the incoming tide and ordered, go back, go back, go back. And of course, the tide didn't go back. So there are two interpretations of this story. I'm just laughing a little bit because there was a humorous advert on TV, which we used to see again and again, of King Canute sitting on his throne, ordering the tide to go back. And then you see him sitting on his throne as it's moving in the waves and it just can give up, and then he pulls out a cigar and starts smoking it. It's a cigar advert. There's a little bit of Prajalpa from my memories. Humorous story. How did that help anyone advance in Krishna consciousness? Don't smoke cigars. I guess humor is based on that. It's so absurd, seeing as there was no tobacco, no concept of cigars in more than 1,000 years in England. Anyway, it's absurdity on absurdity. That you could order the tide to go back. And it's absurd. First of all, it's absurd that we should even be in this material world in the first place. It's even more absurd that someone, after hearing about Krishna consciousness, doesn't take to it. And it's even more absurd that someone, after taking to Krishna consciousness, goes away. I've heard it said, not sure, you could try looking it up, that Srila Prabhupada said that those who don't take to Krishna consciousness are unfortunate. Those who do take to Krishna consciousness are fortunate. And those who take to Krishna consciousness and go away, they're the most unfortunate. It's a case of Janiya Shunya Bisha Kainu. Hari Hari Bifale Janama Gawainu Manusha Janama Paya Radha Krishna Na Bhajiya Janiya Shunya Bisha Kainu. Narottam Das calling out to Lord Hari, uselessly I have passed my life. Having got the human form of life, I didn't worship Radha and Krishna. Therefore, knowingly, I have drunk poison. And it has to be knowingly. If you say all these things, you're calling out to Lord Hari, and then you say, I didn't worship Radha and Krishna. Now, most people are uselessly passing their life, but they don't even know about Radha and Krishna. But if you know, and still you don't, then it's like knowingly drinking poison. And people do. Drinking alcohol. They know it's bad for health. Smoking tobacco. They know it's bad for health. And still they do. It's surprising sometimes to hear how badly devotees can fall. It's almost this, maybe you haven't heard all these things. If you haven't, you're lucky. If you want to, don't. But you can really mess up your intelligence by wandering around on the internet. And there are supposed to be some kind of devotees who take some kind of pleasure in writing and posting on the internet all bad things that devotees who have fallen from the proper standard have done. And it can be quite shocking. What's going on here? It may be that they're feeling repressed. There's this strong desire to enjoy material sense gratification. And they're just bottling it up all inside. This is the negative approach to sense control. We just try to suppress sensual desires. And to do that, that's usually accompanied by a very rigid lifestyle, monastic lifestyle. We call this Krishna Life monastery. But it's unusual for monasteries, for the monks to be so active and outgoing. There are many, or some orders of monks who are reclusive, and many of them, they sit in their cell. It's called a cell. It's like a prison. It's also called a cell, and they may just sit there for most of their day. Every day they sit alone in a cell, and then they may read from the Bible or whatever, and they may say prayers to God, or they may just contemplate. It's not an easy thing to do. And our devotees, they don't lead such a rigid life, but still the rules are there. And we may feel it's repressive. I don't want to follow this. We may not even consciously think like that, but the desires for sense gratification are there, and we're trying to press them down. And then they just leave it all together. And then it's what they're doing, they're trying to indulge, fully make up for lost time. And it's almost as if they want to cover their Krishna consciousness by a heavy dose of Maya. But they suffer. Devotees seeing through the eye of knowledge Vimuha nanu pashanti. Pashanti jnana chakshushaha. How people are living their lives, going from body to body to body. Devotees with the eye of knowledge see this. Unintelligent people don't see this. So it may be that someone who was previously leading an exalted lifestyle, and that's what we're all doing here. We're leading an exalted lifestyle, which most people, they can't even think. Even we're talking about monks, most Christian monks and probably many Buddhist monks also. When we talk about monks, we're mostly talking about either Christians or Buddhists. And now we started to use the word for Krishna monks or Hindu monks, although the word sadhu is the more traditional word. But most of them, they won't lead such a strict life as we do in terms of the regulated principles. Most of them eat meat. Christians, by precept, the Christian priests have to drink alcohol. Because a Catholic priest, they have to do the Mass. It's a ceremony. I suppose it could be roughly compared to arati. They're supposed to perform Mass every day. And on Sundays, at least in the local parish church I used to go to, they do it 5 times. 4 times in the morning, one after the other, because there's not enough space in the church for everyone. And then again in the evening. And they're obliged to drink wine during that, because it's supposed to be a celebration of the Last Supper in which Jesus shared bread and wine with his disciples. And he said, this bread is my body and this wine is my blood. And that's where you maybe have heard of drinking the blood of Jesus or bathing in the blood of Jesus. Sounds macabre to me. But they're obliged to, so and eating meat, you may be surprised, but most Buddhists, including monks, eat meat. And Christians, there are some Christian orders that don't eat meat, but most of them do. So we have a strict regime. Of course, when you've been doing it for some time, you don't think of it as strict, and you wouldn't even, the thought of eating meat and drinking wine is something horrible. You don't know what I'm talking about, do you? Not this lifetime. Used to? You can't imagine, yeah. Good birth. Been raised without that. But yeah, sometimes we hear devotees and they go really to the extreme, and it's you hear about it, it just becomes disgusting, just really disgusting. Or we blame them, we say they're insincere, which is true, must be true to some extent, because if you're sincere, you fully surrender to Krishna. But that's why we do sadhana, and then we're called sadhakas, which means we're on the path of sadhana. It means we're not fully perfect. If we were fully sincere, we wouldn't be here in this material world anyway, unless you happen to be a Paramahamsa who's come from the spiritual world to deliver us all. Please let me know if you happen to be in that category. I didn't recognize due to my lack of spiritual vision. But often it may be. Someone may say, well, this devotee is not treating me properly, or whatever. They may have so many excuses. And they may be somewhat valid reasons, but ultimately people want to enjoy sense gratification, which is why they go away. And that used to be the standard response when someone goes away. Well, they're just insincere. Otherwise, how could they leave? However, I'm going to cover some points which I also discussed yesterday. At some point in the brief history of ISKCON, maybe toward the end of the 1980s or early 1990s, we started to take a different attitude. What happened actually, toward the end of the latter part of the 1980s, many left because there were multiple guru fall downs, and in the wake of their gurus falling away, many disciples did also. They could have stayed. Some stayed, but many didn't. They reposed their faith in their guru to such an extent that it got broken by their guru going away. But then we saw that there are devotees they're very confused, they're neither away, they've gone away to some extent, but they're kind of devotees also, we used to call them fringies, because they're on the fringes. But now what we used to call fringy is mainstream, and around late 1980s, early 1990s, approximately, those who were still within the institution. We used to think of the institution as only the temples, in which there were strict standards. That's changing, or has changed to a large extent. Now, there's talk in North America of having many, many centers in many cities. But the centers they're talking about is once a week all the devotees come together and they do kirtan together. So even the definition of what a center is has changed. But at some point those who were still within the institution started thinking, well, maybe we should have more compassion and try to understand the problems of these devotees. And one thing we can all consider, if we're so fortunate to still be more or less on the right path, is there's a saying, I'm not sure where it came from, you could look it up on the internet if you like, I didn't bother. That's not the saying. There but for the grace of God go I. In other words, we may blame someone, but if I haven't fallen, we can just say it's just Krishna's mercy. Because I'm like a straw before Maya. A straw in a tsunami. Or another saying is, you don't have a snowflake's chance in hell. Because hell is supposed to be fiery, and a snowflake can't exist in it's very delicate. So we're very weak before Maya. We do have our own volition. It's up to us to choose to take to Krishna consciousness, or stay in Krishna consciousness, or to go away from Krishna consciousness. But we can understand we're very weak, and it's just the mercy of Krishna and the devotees, Hari Guru Vaishnava, that I haven't gone away. Srila Prabhupada reportedly said don't be surprised if anyone goes away. Be surprised if anyone stays. In the early days of ISKCON, it was a big shock when someone went away. They couldn't imagine. Having come to this, how could anyone go away? But after some time, and devotees were disturbed. How are they going away? Maybe Krishna consciousness isn't perfect after all. And Srila Prabhupada said, don't be surprised if anyone goes away. Be surprised if anyone stays. And it is surprising, especially in the Western world. Srila Prabhupada's brilliant, Krishna-inspired techniques for preaching, which is one of his brilliant ideas that's documented in this book, The Mood and Mission of Srila Prabhupada, is to bring white-bodied devotees to India. Because Indian people at that time couldn't imagine that Westerners could be sadhus. And even when the Westerners came and they could see them and see them practicing, still many couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it because they thought it's a mixed attitude the Indians had. Now it may have changed. That on one hand, the white man was their ruler for centuries. Well, 2 centuries approximately. And they looked up to them, and they're ingrained in their consciousness is that the white man is superior. Their culture is superior in one sense, but in another sense, they're meat eaters, they drink wine, they're not just meat eaters, they're cow killers, and the philosophy of Vedanta is superior, so it's a mixed feeling. And so Srila Prabhupada knew that Indian people, in one sense, they respected. There's a lot of regard for Western. Western means white in their consideration. And at the same time, spiritually they're nowhere. And they can't be sadhus. So many times in India in the 1970s, people would say to me, you can't be a Hindu. There's no such thing as a converted Hindu. You have to be born a Hindu. Then only you can be a Hindu. So even when devotees came from the West and people saw them chanting Hare Krishna, many were delighted, everyone was surprised, and many thought, well, it's just a fad. They're just doing it for a short time. They can't keep it up. They're some kind of hippie fad. They'd seen already Westerners, that was already known that they'd go to Haridwar and become imitation Shaiva Babas, the smoking ganja. And that was the extent of their Hinduism, so to speak. And Srila Prabhupada, he stood up for his Westerners. He was very strong. No, they are Brahmins. Not only should you accept them as devotees, but as Brahmins. And that was something very big. Nowadays, Brahmins, who cares for Brahmins? Brahmins care for Brahmins. They may, but at that time there was a lot of respect still. And it was expected that if you're Brahmin, means by Brahmin family, that you'll be superior in culture, not eating meat in many cases, in most of the country. Although Bengali, Oriya Brahmins, Assamese, they're expected to at least eat fish. Anyway, in general, no alcohol, and expected to be of good character, moral character. So they can't be Brahmins. It's ridiculous. How can they be Brahmins? And Prabhupada is very strong. No, you should accept them. It was a big risk for Srila Prabhupada, because many of his devotees did fall down. Many of his disciples fell down. Now we make a big fuss when a sannyasi falls down, and it should be, because someone who's taken that position shouldn't fall. But at the same time, we're giving Brahminical initiation, and that should also be seen as it's not a light thing. We think it's just, okay, you chant Hare Krishna for a little time, you get first initiation, and you get in second initiation, and it's no big deal. But it should be a big deal. It should be that one is very serious, very strict, and there's no question of fall down. It's a big thing. But the reality that we're seeing is, even if someone's been practicing for many years, there's no guarantee that they won't go away. Now, I'm saying this mostly with respect to preaching in the Western world, because in the Western world also, we don't see devotees who have been practicing for a long time just reneging on their vows, if they've been following them for many years. But still it happens. But it's more common among those who are in the first 5 years or 10 years. It's more common. But generally speaking, in India, those who take to Krishna consciousness and they start following, because not everyone in India follows all the rules, definitely not tea and coffee. That's very unusual, not to drink tea and coffee. Even in the ashrams, when I might visit some Mayavadi ashram or something, it happens. I may just going on the bank of the Narmada, and you have to, all along, if you're going to go to bathing, then all along the banks there are Mayavadi ashrams. And the first thing they'll say to you, chai penge, will you drink? Happily, to welcome a guest, they offer a glass of tea, cup of tea, as if it's most normal. They can't imagine. But usually when someone takes to Krishna consciousness from an Indian background, I think probably in America also, the ones, if they have been meat eaters, which unfortunately most Indians are nowadays, then they don't usually go back on that. And I think in the West also, they don't. Many of them were not meat eaters in the first place. I don't know now, but in our generation, most of those who joined in Krishna consciousness, many were already vegetarian before they joined, which wasn't so common, but those who joined. But then things, intoxication is a big one in the West. Those who tend to fall into that. But then again, in India, most people who join would not have been. Alcohol drinking is still not very common and not considered very good in India. Still there. Who drinks? Hindus and Christians. If Muslims do, they do on the sly. But it's considered quite low class to drink alcohol. And Hindus know it's wrong. Christians don't think it's wrong, but Hindus know it's wrong. And Buddhists also, you won't find them. Especially the monks, they won't drink alcohol. And then, and illicit sex, at least among Indians, and it is dissolving. But the idea that you get married, you stay married, and and sex is within marriage. That's still general, although the forces of Kali Yuga have been bashing on that for decades, but it's still quite strong. But unfortunately, here in the West, divorce and remarriage among devotees is so common, no one thinks anything of it, practically. So that's also a kind of fall down. And there's no guarantee. If someone's been practicing, there's no guarantee for anyone. So so we're talking about compassion. We should be compassionate to try to help them, knowing that Maya is very strong. Anyone can go away. We should try to help them to come back. But in this way, what's happened is condemnation or blaming devotees who go away has become condemned. But blame also has its usefulness. Because if you think you're going to get blamed for one major reason that people don't act badly is because they're afraid of social censure. There used to be a saying in Tamil Nadu, so I'm told, that a Brahmana is 100% a Brahmana when he's in the Agraharam. That means in the Brahmana area. When he's among other Brahmanas, he's 100%. When he's at home, he's 50%. And when he's alone, if he goes in the forest, he can do whatever he likes. Have you heard this also? Telugu Brahmin? By backgrounds? Have you heard this? Is that saying there in Telugu also? Yes. And it's said that in tantric rites, tantric orgies, that you'll find brahmanas there. And there'll be brahmana women, anyway, with the most low-class people, and maybe their husbands having it with the most low-class women, and this and that. It's said. Some people say like that. There may be cases, but I doubt it, but there may be cases. You never know. Although if they were found out, they'd be out. There's no coming back. Anyway, condemnation serves a purpose. Devotees might not fall down so much if they think, well, I'm going to be blamed for this. If we're just compassionate and say, yeah, anyone can fall, then you don't make a big thing of it. And then, yeah, you can go away and who cares? Or go away or break the principles. And it's not such a, it's not so bad. I mean, anyone can do it. And then it becomes normalized. And if there is blame and condemnation of those who act sinfully after taking to Krishna consciousness, it helps to keep it clear in everyone's mind what is proper and what is improper. Because if we don't clearly say that it is wrong to indulge in intoxication and illicit sex, and divorce is wrong, and contraception is wrong, and abortion is wrong, unless we say this, and unless we're strong on it, then what's the proper standard? It becomes lost or not clear. Just like among all the Christian denominations, major Christian denominations, the Roman Catholic Church is the only one which says, as far as I know, the Protestant denominations don't say that contraception is wrong. But they don't press on it. They won't change their stance on it, but at the same time it's a case of tumbi chup, humbi chup. We won't say anything about it, that's all. And divorce is not considered proper, but there was some Joe Biden, Catholic, divorcee. You're not supposed the priests are not supposed to give Holy Communion. That means religious right to divorcees, even if they claim themselves to be Catholics, because it's considered so bad. But that became an issue when he became the president. And one prominent Christian priest said, "I'll give him," in defiance of Catholic doctrine and the Pope's orders. So keeping a clear standard, for that we have to say, this is wrong. At the same time, compassion is required, and not just completely blaming everyone, and we have to keep the door open, so to speak, for them to be able to engage in service and come back. And as we know, there may be many devotees who are not practicing very properly, who can still do a lot of service in many ways. They can give financial donations, which money is required. In organizing Rath Yatras and work, there's a lot of work to do in organizing Rath Yatras and other festivals. Jayananda Prabhu famously would engage all kinds of people off the street who never even heard of the principles. He wouldn't even tell them the principles. He'd just say, here's a hammer, get to work. But he was so good with people, he'd get all kinds of people who are not really devotees at all. He'd get them engaged in devotional service. So if such people can be engaged, then why not devotees who they're maybe not practicing on the best standard? So there's a tension between compassion and discipline. On one hand, we want to keep the door open to everyone. We don't want to blame them so badly that they feel discouraged and they don't want to come back. On the other hand, we have to say this is wrong. So there's a tension between accommodating and encouraging on one side, and being clear what the standards are. And there may be restrictions placed on devotees in the ISKCON justice system. There may be restrictions for devotees who have been found guilty within the ISKCON justice system of doing very bad things, especially child abuse. I think that's maybe the only, I'm not sure if they give restrictions on others, but there are the restrictions. You can't if you're allowed to come to the temple at all. I don't think there's a restriction stopping anyone coming to a temple, but they should report to the temple president, or they shouldn't be around when children. But so, I don't know exactly what the restrictions are. But one thing is, they're not allowed to lead kirtan. They're not allowed to give classes. So some restriction is there. Although they could engage in kirtan, we have no right to tell anyone, don't chant Hare Krishna, don't join us in kirtan. So they may be encouraged to at least join in kirtan. It's paradoxical. We have to be strict, and we have to be liberal also. How do you apply that? You have to see individual cases. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was very strict. But his devotees, they would accommodate those who were rejected by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would accept that, just like Kala Krishna does. He fell down in the direct association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If you think that, why have we fallen? Sometimes said you can't fall from the spiritual world, but you can fall from the direct association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Kala Krishna left him and didn't want to stay with him. He wanted to indulge in sense gratification. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu forcibly brought him back. And Kala Krishnadas went on assisting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He accepted his service up to that point. There was no one else to serve him. And then when he reached Puri, he said, okay, now you go. Now I don't want you anymore. But the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu found a way to keep Kala Krishnadas engaged by sending him to Bengal to give the news that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has returned to Puri. So this way they kept engaged. They kept him engaged. With Chota Haridas, he was also rejected, and there was no. The devotees were sympathetic to him, but they didn't find any way to engage him. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very strict. Regarding that, Srila Prabhupada said, if I was so strict, I wouldn't have anyone to help me. I can't be so strict. One of Srila Prabhupada's earlier disciples, one of his very first disciples, who Srila Prabhupada is personally very affectionate to him. I can't say that Srila Prabhupada is personally affectionate to me in the sense that he was with, Hayagriva I'm talking about now, and then Kirtanananda, Hari Shauri, Harikesh. He lamented that I'm with Prabhupada, but Prabhupada seems to like Hari Shauri better, because Prabhupada would get into conversations with him, and Harikesh, whenever he got in a conversation with Prabhupada, many times it became an argument, because Harikesh would take adverse philosophical positions, and Prabhupada liked him to do that. So Prabhupada always ended up smashing him, taking him to actually, as if he's actually an atheist or whatever. So one time, Hayagriva, I presume it's Hayagriva, this is mentioned in Giriraj Swami's, one of his books, that news came that Hayagriva, he was smoking dope. And the devotees were asking Prabhupada, what should we tell him? Because he won't listen to us. His connection is directly with Prabhupada. He doesn't accept any authority. So Prabhupada said, tell him that if he doesn't stop, I'll reject him. Heavy. Then devotees asked Prabhupada, would you actually reject him? He said, no. But he goes on. He doesn't stop. He goes on, and you tell him, he says, oh yeah, very bad, and then he'll just do it again. He's shameless in that regard. He said, Prabhupada, sometimes in lectures you'll hear, he said, I can give once, twice, but no more than 3 times. He says that in lectures. There's a limit. But then when, in this case, Prabhupada said, Nityananda Prabhu's mercy knows no limits. Because, of course, there's a case of Jagai and Madhai, and all. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is given credit for delivering Jagai and Madhai, but it's because of Nityananda Prabhu's intercession, actually. So Srila Prabhupada is willing to be very liberal in that sense. And should I say it or should I not say it? It may have its regrettable consequences, because in the case of a divorce, Srila Prabhupada, there was one case where a devotee asked Prabhupada for permission, and Prabhupada agreed, and then Shrutakirti Prabhu, he was confused about it. He said, Prabhupada, you've spoken so many times against divorce, how can you permit a disciple to do that? And Prabhupada said, well, if I didn't if I didn't agree, he'd do it anyway. And then because he asked me, it'd become an offense, it'd become worse. Anyway, he's going to do something wrong. But what I'm seeing is that the devotees take it there. Yeah, Prabhupada allowed it. So Srila Prabhupada is very merciful, but if we take advantage of that. And so it does become more difficult to maintain standards, because mercy works against, it can work against our self-interest, or the interest of the whole endeavor to bring everyone back to Godhead. The idea that, well, the mercy is always there. But the other side of that is, if we take mercy for granted, then we don't become eligible for mercy. When we think, Mosama potita prabhu na pai beya, and we think there's no one more fallen than myself, and then I'm in need of mercy, then you can get it. But then then the offense against the holy name, what is that, the ninth offense? What is that? No, that's Asharadhani Vimokapya Shrimati. Na nobaladyasi papa buddhya, na vidyate tasya yamai hishuddhi. That says that committing sins on the strength of the holy name, you can't be rectified even by Yama, by Yamaraj. That means it's so bad that even Yamaraj's punishments. Another way that can be taken is that Yama also means rules. So if you do one thing wrong and you think, well, I'm following all these rules, and so what does it matter if I do one thing wrong? Because I'm chanting the holy names and I'm following all the other rules. So that's another way. You can't be purified simply by following rules. So, compassion. It is a fact. We need to have compassion. And the way I'm talking, it sounds like I'm speaking against compassion and openness and help, trying to understand and help devotees. That should be there. But it shouldn't be taken for granted. We should feel, yes, I'm doing something wrong, if we're doing something wrong. At the same time, there has to be help and guidance among the devotees, even before those who fall away. Try and help them. Support systems, the spiritual shelter, with counseling systems. But then, who can you trust? You have to be able to trust someone. Trust them, first of all, that they won't divulge your secrets, because that can be very damaging. There was the case of Madhudvisa, who it came out that as a sannyasi, he was having illicit sex with several brahmacharinis, which is absolutely disgraceful, of course. But then Srila Prabhupada's secretary at the time, he made this known to other leaders. And Prabhupada was very upset with that and said that you've spoiled, you've made it very, very difficult for him to come back. Srila Prabhupada wanted to deal with him personally. He didn't want that his misdeeds be known, because at the same time, Prabhupada was very happy with Madhudvisa, because he had gone to Australia at a time when the movement was in a shambles, and he had very good leadership qualities, and he was a good devotee in as much as he inspired devotees and organized everything, and everything was going on well. But he secretly, privately, had this dark side also. So Prabhupada wanted to take the good side, personally deal with him, as he was an important leader, and not let these. No, actually, I think it was Rameshwar. Anyway, whoever it was. And not let these things let it become publicized. Nowadays you can't stop that because there's no consciousness that we should, or it's considered very wrong. Cover-up is very wrong, it's considered. So, if there are devotees we can have confidence in, we can go to them and they won't divulge secrets. That's supposed to be doctors. They're not supposed to divulge if anyone tells them their personal history. I suppose that's especially for psychiatrists. That becomes a difficult situation also. The Roman Catholic priest, they hear confessions of sins. You must have been raised as a Roman Catholic, I guess, Giri? No? From Latin America. You're raised as what? No religion? Christian, but non-denominational Christian, something like that? Baptist, okay. Your parents were Baptists, they already got swept up by the evangelical wave. Jittigiri was raised a Catholic. Did you ever do confession? You did, yeah. So if you have to tell your sins to the priest, you have to go on Saturday evening, tell your sins, Sunday morning go to Mass, and then right after the Mass, the men go to the pub, and the women go home and cook the roast beef. That was my childhood Catholic upbringing. That was a major part of it. So it's what does the priest do when he says, if someone comes in and says, I murdered my wife and hid the body? What does he do? I don't know actually. Are they obliged by law to report him? I don't know the protocol. I'm cheating on my wife. I'm cheating on my husband, whatever. The devotee you confide in, they have to know what's the best thing to do for the individual who's being confided in, who's confiding with them, and for the overall good of the institution also. If someone says, I'm regularly stealing from the devotees, or whatever, so one thing is you have to be able to trust them to keep secrets, and if it's something like, well, I'm struggling with following the principles, but you're not doing it in such a way that causes overt harm to others, then the counselor should be trustworthy not to go and divulge that, so you can help the struggling devotee. And should also be trustworthy that he can give suitable advice and is prepared to stick it out with you. It's not an easy thing to be a counselor. There's training for that with chaplains. They get training. Prison chaplains, they get training how to deal with people, because they may be influenced by humanistic psychology. So maintaining standards while being merciful, distinguishing accidental fall downs from obstinate deviation. Now, this term, accidental fall down, it's there, and Ajamil is a case, and there are so many other cases. But what actually does it mean? It means that suddenly we were in a situation where we were not able to control our senses. Theoretically, we should be able to control ourselves in any situation, because no one forces you. It's very unusual that someone will physically force you to, for instance, drink alcohol. They may socially pressurize you to do that. You may go to visit your family, for instance, and they may express their disappointment that you don't want to eat meat with us or something like that. But no one physically forces you to do that. One thing would be to avoid such situations, but you might find yourself in a situation where temptation is very strong and you succumb due to your own weakness. And for that reason, it's, we're going all over the place here, but it's also important that devotees, when they go for preaching, go in at least two. Because what we've had is cases of, well, this used to happen quite often when our devotees, they started selling paintings instead of books. They think, well, we're good at selling books, why don't we sell paintings? We can make more money. We get these cheap paintings from Hong Kong which look like you can buy them, and they're actually originally painted, but at that time labor in Hong Kong was very cheap, and they're good quality paintings, but they're copies of other paintings, and so send devotees door to door to sell paintings instead of books. And often you'd have to do that in the evening, and it may go late night, and there's no taste from selling painting. The most popular paintings were dog paintings, so I'm told. I never did it myself. Probably if you had nudes, that would be the most popular. Maybe, maybe not, because you're going to families, so they probably prefer dog painting. They already have a dog in their house, and they want more dog painting. But it would happen that young, outgoing, confident men, maybe married or not married, and they open the door and there's a woman alone in the home who invites them in. And things can happen which weren't planned. So that could be called an accidental fall down. But we should protect against that also, so that accidents don't happen. That's why roads are designed in such a way to minimize the possibility of accidents, or to reduce the possibility of accidents. That's why, again, I have to refer to the land I was born in this time, that the roads, you won't go more than a short distance when they're building highways. They're called motorways in Britain, before it bends. And so you could have a straight road, absolutely straight road, but they find it better to make the road bend, and that helps to keep drivers awake. Because if it's absolutely straight road, you're more likely to fall asleep when you're driving. So it's deliberately made that the road bends. And it's not that it bends the same way every time either. Maybe after more distance or less distance, right or left, this angle, that angle. So you have to, it helps to keep awake. So there can be precautions against fall down also. Keeping good association. Encouraging devotees. If they insist they didn't do anything wrong, it's very difficult to help them. Or if they say, oh, it's just an accidental fall down, still we should regret. If they don't regret, then it's hard to help them. But still they may be willing to do some devotional activities. But it becomes somewhat distasteful and somewhat dangerous to the devotee community if someone is known to have fallen, or if they regularly do. If someone is, they may be a very good kirtan leader, but they might be regularly smoking dope or taking mushrooms or something like that. They may be good at doing yagyas, but they don't follow all the principles, and they say, well, what's the harm? And we say, well, they do good yagyas. Okay, let's call them to do, or they do good kirtans. They get devotees really enlivened, but their character off stage is not so good. So then it becomes something like a show rather than actual kirtan, because if one's actually performing kirtan, it means actually praying to Krishna rather than just being a good musician. You may be a good musician, and you may be a good communicator, musically communicative. You can get people to feel some sensation, and you can get them all involved in the kirtan and singing. But it's not actually spiritual. You can see if the people themselves who are good musical communicators don't follow the principles, or they're not committed devotees in the proper philosophical line. I saw in Bangladesh that the popular kirtan groups, they're paid professional groups, and they're paid to go around and do kirtan. They weren't paid a lot of money, but it's one way of getting some money in a country which at the time was very poor. And they're good kirtaniers, and they create an atmosphere by their music. They know how to do that. But then you'll get groups who'd pay them to chant Jai Guru, Jai Guru, Jai Guru, and that instead of the Maha Mantra. Some bogus sampradaya. There are so many bogus sampradayas in Bangladesh. And some of them, they do kirtans, and people don't care. If you pay us some money, we'll go and we'll sing whatever you like. That means they're singing for the money. They may have some taste for chanting Hare Krishna, but it's not in the proper philosophical line. So we see also popular kirtaniers in the ISKCON circuit. They do gigs, and they're paid, they're flown in, and they do gigs. And they'll chant Hare Krishna sometimes, and Radhe Radhe sometimes, which Srila Prabhupada didn't encourage, and Om Namo Shivaya, for instance. And, I feel just, he sings so nicely, and I really feel it in my heart. But this is not the teachings of the Acharyas. So it's not the real thing. It might feel like the real thing, but it's not. Now, we're supposed to be talking about fall down here, but that's more like deviation, which is another kind of fall down. It may not come to the level of breaking the principles. But then if you can deviate that way, this way or that way, then why not the other way? And there are also well-known kirtaniers or performers, expert in performing yagyas with a lot of finesse, who regularly ingest intoxicating substances. And so in this way, fall down becomes, it's not considered fall down if we are so compassionate that we keep on engaging them, and they say that, well, what's wrong with it? That's not compassion. That's a disservice to Vaishnava society. So compassion comes when devotees are sincere and serious and admit they did something wrong. It can be a disservice to to push them away. But then in other cases it can be a disservice to engage them. It can be harsh to be told you're doing something. I know one of my godbrothers, he went away, and then he was coming around again, but he had certain bad habits, and he's from England. I met him. He's passed away now. And I said to him, such and such, I said his name, Prabhu, you really blew it. Because he was in a prominent position, but for years he'd not been following the principle. And one of my other godbrothers told me later that really struck, because no one said that to him, it seems. It really struck him hard, because he was doing service and coming around and coming back, but no one laid the line down on him and told him that. And then I told the devotee who told me that he was really affected by that. Oh, I don't remember saying that. And he said, well, if I tell him that, he'll really be devastated. And it's a risk, how you deal with people. If you're too soft, then they may never come around. If you're hard, they might go away. But it might just turn them around. One time in Bangalore, someone came to me and said, hey, I've been chanting Hare Krishna for 12 years, but I can't stop eating onions and garlic. What should I do? And he said, don't bother, I'm not going to waste my time with you. You're 12 years and you still didn't give it up. What's the use of talking to you? And I heard later that after that he stopped. Because he would go to others and say, well, it's not good and this and that. And didn't have any effect. And I just said, you're useless. Just don't bother wasting my time. And apparently that had the effect. But it could have blown him out altogether. I could have been banned from going to the temple for as it happens in some places, where you just say things like that and then you get banned for not being sensitive. That's the buzzword these days, right? Being sensitive. So when we talk about being compassionate, even talking about being compassionate with devotees, that seeing the way that our society of devotees has evolved or devolved, it's almost outdated to even talk about being compassionate, because being compassionate means you recognize there's a problem, but you don't smash them. But now if you don't even recognize that there is a problem, then where's the question of being compassionate? Srila Prabhupada we hear about him being all compassionate. But his compassion also took the form in having high standards and high ideals. What's happened is, as I say, the number of those staying outside has far outnumber those who are strictly living a life with high ideals and high standards. And they've never had this strict life of rising early, sadhana, and it's almost accepted that you get initiated, but it's not expected that you'll rise early for Mangalarti. It seems to be not even expected that no one tells you that you're not supposed to eat kami food. And you see all the devotees doing it, so it's just accepted. No one even tells you. And even going to cinemas may not just, and even having contraceptive sex may not only be not told about or not discouraged, but maybe even be encouraged in some cases. So I'm told by certain grihasta devotees. So The compassion, there's no talk of compassion because what we previously considered fallen is no longer considered fallen, so we don't even talk about falling down anymore, except in the case of high-profile devotees. Anyway, at least here, we're trying to maintain a good standard and take Krishna consciousness seriously. And we don't want to go to a lower standard where fall down is normalized. That's institutional fall down, institutionalized fall down. Because there's supposed to be a higher level, and if you're on lower level, that means you're down. The fall down comes in the case when you've gone up. But if you don't even go up, then there's no question of fall down. So no one falls down nowadays. So there's no one to be compassionate to anymore, because a lower level is considered normal. Anyway, there is a question of how to accommodate varying levels of commitment without compromising standards. And then again we come to Varnashram Dharma, in which Brahmanas are supposed to follow very strictly. And they are given a lot of privilege, and they're looked up to, but they have to maintain high standards. And then others, if they're not going to follow, then we may not initiate them even. That may arise. We have Varnashram communities. You're not going to follow for life. You're not ready. You're ready to make that commitment and stick to it. If not, then don't be initiated. And mostly people want to be initiated because they want to feel part of the club, so to speak, or feel endorsed. So there may be some kind of recognition within Varnashram society which doesn't come to the level of initiation. Or maybe we have a different kind of initiation. Otherwise, the people feel they want that endorsement, and they may go off to some complete Sahajya group just to get that endorsement. So these are all complex questions. I have in that book, The Mode of Mission, Srila Prabhupada, the Srila Prabhupada standards of initiation. They should be the standard. But who do we give them to? That is another question. Maybe we shouldn't give as liberally as Srila Prabhupada did. He was very liberal in giving. But then he became very upset, actually, and that devotees are not following. And he said, don't give initiation very easily. So there are so many questions, so many issues. And we come to Varnashram, and we really want to do this. We're looking to devotees to try and do something seriously about this. We should do this for Srila Prabhupada's pleasure. And why did Prabhupada want to do this? For the benefit of the world. So we should get into this and do it. It's not going to be easy. We need devotees to commit. There are going to be many tests and challenges and difficulties, and it's easier to fizzle out and become what we used to call a fringy. Again, there may be some accommodation for those who are not ready to follow fully, strictly all their life, and we have to recognize that. Anyway, these are bigger questions and can be dealt with here. And we'll finish there now. And I was going to take some questions because I thought I'd finish sooner, but I didn't finish. I went way over time. Cancel the arti? Okay. I'm also a bit drained, but anyway, this is important. Now, I want to say to Nirmaya and Janardhan and Krishna, your experience is different to the one I'm talking about because you were raised in a Vaishnava family, in a Vaishnava community. But in a Vaishnava community in which there's so many devotees at so many levels, and very few actually are following to the minimum level that Srila Prabhupada wanted. And at the same time, with there's a general atmosphere of don't disturb anyone and don't be judgmental, that's the word, don't be judgmental. So you made it through thanks to your good father who unfortunately passed away when you were... How old were you when your father passed away, Nima? 12. Oh, it's not so long ago that he passed. 5 years ago, yeah. And you were already well established in your principles, I guess. I mean, you were older. How much older are you? Janardhan? What's your age now?
23, so I'm 6 years older.
6 years older. But still, despite the fact that you had good background from your parents, you were in the Alachua community and you went, your companions as you were growing up were young boys, and maybe girls also, from a background who were committedly not strict. Right? Or they liked, the youth, they like to do kirtan, but they don't like philosophy much, unless it's highly esoteric. And they don't like to be told what to do. Is that right? Is that a good general... They like to be accepted for what they are.
Yeah, that's like really spot on.
Which is not conducive for spiritual advancement, and which comes to sahajya. Sahajya means those who take it very cheaply, very easily. It's not exactly the same as the sahajyas of Bengal, but it's the same kind of attitude. But you made it through to this initiation, serious commitment. You've seen how most of those you grew up with are not in this line, but you've chosen to be in this line. And that's very good of you, and it's a lot to do with your parents, is it not?
Yeah, I can give all of the credit to them. They did all the hard work.
They did a lot of hard work, and you have to go on doing hard work.
For me, I can also give a lot of credit to him, because he's the one who brought me in the first
Yeah,
place.
that's also true, because younger brothers tend to look up to elder brothers. That's human psychology. Something from previous life also. That's with all of them who are born in that situation. They had Krishna consciousness from previous life. You might have seen Prabhupada. Quite possible.
Does that make me the most unfortunate then?
Well, the most unfortunate can become fortunate, can't they? Yeah, you want to say something?
Very much. One thing I guess Prabhu's not saying is that his father always made sure that they never had karmic grains.
They never had karmic
Never had.
grains.
Like you said, only maybe once or twice in your life, right, with your father. Right?
He was very strict on that. And I guess, you know what, he got that from Harikesh,
Yeah.
who was very strict on that, no karmic grains.
Yeah, he himself, he would never take it. But
Yeah. That's a major factor actually, which was much underestimated.
His mother was telling us also that his father was always there for Mangalarti, no matter what. He was always there. He was doing all the, he was doing lots of pujari service and doing all this editorial. Actually, his name is there in All Glories to the Sankirtan devotees in the, what section?
It's like in the beginning.
Yes, in the acknowledgements, Chaitanya Rahita Das, his name is there. So.
What was his name?
Chaitanya Rahita Prabhu.
Chaitanya Rahita means unconscious. That's the literal meaning, right? Chaitanya Rahita means unconscious. It's literally what it means. Chaitanya means consciousness and Rahit means without.
Yeah, I guess the name was given like without material consciousness.
Yeah, or it may be Lord Chaitanya's unconscious in ecstasy. Murcha, that's one of the ecstatic symptoms, is fainting. He must be there in one of the. I mean, it wasn't just made up. Many of the names were given by Sanskrit scholars among Harikesha's followers that Ekanath used to give.
And apparently he would read Krishna book to Nimai every night, right? You were saying he would read Krishna book to Nimai every night.
Still do that? It's a good practice. We used to hear that when I joined here. We should read Krishna book at night, so you sleep and you remember Krishna. I try to read just before I rest at least. I mean, all day I'm wandering through Gita and Chaitanya Charitamrita, but systematic. I try to just sit down with a book and read it. Don't get puffed up. Anything else anyone want to say?
One day also I came to Alachua to meet his friends. We make some feast and we spoke. And what I observed that this mostly of them, they're full of energy, full of spiritual energy. They really very smart, very intelligent. Like
They're friends.
Yes, the devotees and next generation.
Need someone to inspire them in the right way, huh?
And what I observed, like they have dissatisfaction what is going on in the society of devotees.
They have
Dissatisfaction.
dissatisfaction.
Because they see, for example, one of them, he told, I never can give my kid, my child, to the Gurukula, because I know what is going on there, and I have like so many examples. I know so many devotees, not only one Gurukula, but I know this and this Gurukula, this Gurukula, this.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to, because failure is a pillar of success, right? It doesn't mean that Gurukul is a bad project or that every Gurukul has to be bad. And what's going on in the Gurukuls is also going on in the regular public schools also.
Yes. But point that then we can tell that many.
So it's not that your children are going to be safe anywhere, practically. Then it comes to homeschooling.
It means like sometimes we're thinking that the devotees or some people.
Yeah, they lost faith.
And then they not.
Well, that's why we have a great challenge, because at least among devotees I'm associated with, we're trying to say that, okay, we blew it with farms and gurukuls, but that's Prabhupada's desire. That's the way, that's what we have to do if we're going to make a Krishna conscious revolution. So we just can't stop it altogether and send your kids to slaughterhouse schools. We have to, okay, we messed it up, let's do it right. Someone has to do it right at some point in time. And that's one of the difficulties, is that we have to face skepticism. Skepticism with a basis, I guess.
Yes, what is the line in sincerity and in our our mistakes, because sometimes really some people, they can insincere and they can go because they have some material attachments, what we can do. But another side, what we cannot offer them what is.
Well, come on, let's show us something better. That's what Prabhupada said. Don't just complain. Set a better example. Do something. Show it. Show something better. So I complain about different things, but I'm trying to do something better also. If you simply complain, what's the use?
Maharaja, you spoke about mental fall down or internal fall down, where we're contemplating on certain things.
Krishna speaks, Dhyayato Vishayam Pungsam, Sangasteshu Pajayate, Sangat Sanjayate. You know the verse very well.
One of the main problems we
Is this coming through?
Yeah, one of the main problems we have in our modern society within our Krishna consciousness is, our phones, where
Yeah. That's why in farm communities we're trying to say no phones, but it's really hard. It's really hard for devotees to give them up, and also because if you want to communicate, for instance, we need to call someone who's working on the construction. It's a tough one. Giving up for it's quite common.
Gaura Hari Gahi